Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got good, bad, and crazy martinis for you today. And Jim, Jerry Seinfeld has brought us lots of good martinis in life in general. 9 seasons worth, actually. Although the finale, as he will readily admit, was perhaps not as great as everyone expected.
Controversial.
Yes, could not live up to the expectations would be my way of saying it, but it could have been better. But today, Jerry Seinfeld is an actual good martini because he was on the New Yorker Radio Hour podcast, and they were talking about the current state of comedy. And in this clip, Seinfeld's larger point is you have to adapt to where the culture is on this. He likened it to skiing, saying you got to see where the gates are open and you got to adjust your downhill slalom to those gates. But the point we're going to focus on here is basically how wokeness on the left has killed comedy as you and I certainly knew it growing up. And a lot of people, even in the 90s and the early part of the 2000s, understood comedy. And here is how Jerry Seinfeld explained that.
Nothing really affects comedy. People always need it. They need it so badly, and they don't get it. It used to be you would go home at the end of the day, most people would go, oh, Cheers is on, oh, MASH is on, oh, Mary Tyler Moore is on, All in the Family's on. You just expected there'll be some funny stuff we can watch on TV tonight. Well, guess what? Where is it? This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying so much about offending other people. Mm-hmm. When you write a script and it goes into 4 or 5 different hands, committees, groups, here's our thought about this joke, well, that's the end of your comedy.
No, that's exactly right, Jim. And that's not funny. That's offensive. That's kind of what we hear all the time from the left. Seinfeld certainly poked fun at different parts of life for 9 seasons. And if you go back to All in the Family, as he referenced, there was absolutely nothing off limits at that time. If you put some of these college kids in a seminar watching those episodes, which was put together by a raging lib, Norman Lear, but he also understood comedy. People want escapism. I mean, back during the Vietnam War, the most popular shows were Andy Griffith and shows that made people forget about it. The left wants you to constantly be thinking about your grievances. Most people don't. Jerry Seinfeld's exactly right.
So I saw somebody on Twitter responding to this by sneering, Jerry Seinfeld's never been funny. Shut up. It's like saying Michael Jordan was never that good at basketball, right? Like, different people have different comedic tastes, but I think we can say Jerry Seinfeld, one of the most phenomenally successful, goes into the Hall of Fame of all-time television sitcoms. Lots of great stand-up routines, preceding then. Jerry Seinfeld, if you want to argue with what Jerry Seinfeld has said, fine. Don't say he's not funny. The fact that you're saying he's not funny is, in fact, genuinely funny. Secondly, Seinfeld is correct that there's this need to adapt to the times. If you watch the very first episode of Seinfeld, or one of the early ones, maybe it's not the very first one, one of his first routines is about the annoyance of being at the supermarket and getting stuck behind a lady writing a check. And of course she has to write the check. Like, very few people write checks. Even little old ladies generally are using their credit cards, ATM cards, debit cards, stuff like that. One of my all-time favorite jokes from Dennis Miller is, every time I go to the ATM, I get behind somebody who's trying to execute a hostile takeover of RJR Nabisco through the machine, right? They're always, what's RJR Nabisco, right? This guy, like that phraseology sticks in my head, and I'm still quoting it. And of course, that company doesn't exist anymore. Nonetheless, I do get behind the guy who seems to be doing something extraordinarily complicated instead of just going, boop, 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 here's my money, take it out, and then go on. I kind of wonder if, first of all, I was really hoping before you played that audio, we'd get something like, Greg, what is the deal with these unhappy campus leftists? They're more annoying than that tag that's in the middle of your shirt. Why do we have this right in our love handle? Anyway, I also kind of feel like a lot of comedy, not all, like you can do political comedy from the left or right, but I think a lot of really good comedy, and maybe the most, is kind of a theme of, like, to quote Shakespeare, what fools these mortals be. This sense that, like, when Seinfeld does his observational, we laugh because, yes, we've noticed the same thing. We have that same feeling of every time we go to the supermarket, there's a little old lady writing a check that takes forever. Or the guy at the ATM is taking, we get annoyed by it, but there's that universal sense, and why is it always that way? And here we are in advance. We can put a man on the moon, but they cannot use the ATM in less than 45 minutes. That same sense of like, why is life this way? And it's this shared bond, this shared lament, And I think that most contemporary leftism, they for a long time, the left liked tearing down institutions that were perceived as the establishment, that were perceived as conservative. Now the left runs the institution, so we can't make fun of them anymore. But also there's this sense that like the left wants you to be angry. The left wants you to be outraged. The left wants you to be so fed up with the state of things that you're out in the street and marching. And anything that's like, bah, that's life. What are you going to do? That dissipates the anger, right? This same sense that Jerry Seinfeld, successful comedian who we're watching on our televisions, still gets annoyed when there's somebody in front of him at the ATM that takes forever. This is this kind of universal, it doesn't matter who you are. We all get annoyed by the same kind of things. That kind of undermines that culture of grievance and that culture of anger and outrage and something must be done about this. That is the jet fuel for contemporary progressivism.
So here's the thing, I think, because, our entire growing up and even before we came of age, Hollywood largely had lefties. The entertainment industry has largely been dominated by lefties. But there were funny people who happened to be lefty, and their lefty stuff got into their comedy. But Saturday Night Live, when we were growing up, and the movies we watched, they certainly weren't conservative. But then the leftism became the point. I think Jon Stewart, pre-retirement, first retirement on Daily Show, was the last guy who was actually still funny. He got ideological towards the end as well, but he could still once in a while poke fun at his own side, and that was hilarious. And even the times where we thought he was kind of ridiculous and criticizing the right, the way he presented it was still funny. But now the only people left are the people who are so rich they don't care anymore. Like Seinfeld, like Dave Chappelle, they just don't care. They're too rich for so you cancel them. So what?
Kevin Hart dabbles in these waters every now and then. Yeah. And it's funny you're mentioning this because just yesterday, my older teenager, first of all, so he's taking advanced AP U.S. history, or APUSH as they call it. They're studying George H.W. Bush. This is where they are in the calendar year. And like that feeling when your kids are studying history that you remember as current events. Read My Lips, No New Taxes, they gotten up to. And last night I had to show some Dana Carvey sketches just because like I don't, one, like, if you're going to think of the George H.W. Bush presidency, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Secondly, half of my impressions are just me doing Dana Carvey doing somebody else. Now here's the deal. See, not going to do it. But so there's that, but also the degree to which like Carvey and George H.W. Bush ended up becoming lifelong friends. And Bush loses the re-election, has Carvey come to the White House to perform for the staff in that December. And there's just this, and Carvey himself has talked about this, like it was just a different era. I don't think Dana Carvey's a Republican. I don't think Dana Carvey probably ever voted for George H.W. Bush. Norm Macdonald did say that he voted for Dole because it would be good for me doing the impression of Dole. But like the idea that like you could make fun of someone but still feel this, there could be good feeling. There was no hard feelings, and everybody kind of was able to enjoy it. And you look at Alec Baldwin portraying Trump. There's just every aspect of that impression, which is not that good an impression. The guy they've got, Jay Johnson or whatever, like much better with Trump, much better. He's got the language and the tone much better. Alec Baldwin is just like you could just tell he just utterly hated Trump. Trump only said that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. That's a joke grenade. Throw it 3 seconds later, then there's a reaction. Hey, this is like we could do the entire episode discussing political comedy, Greg. We probably
absolutely on both counts. But yes, good for Jerry Seinfeld to say it. He's one of the few who can and get away with it. So I'm glad that he did, and hopefully people understand that they don't want to be just inundated with leftist grievances all the time. But unfortunately, I don't think that message is going to get across anytime soon. All right, Jim, on to our Bad Martini now. And Columbia University is not sponsoring the Bad Martini, but they might as well be because they're getting all the attention here. Yesterday was supposed to be the deadline for ending the encampment, the pro-gun Gaza pro-Hamas, anti-Israel encampment on Columbia. It's supposed to be at 2 p.m. And then it seemed like they really kind of started to disband because it started to rain more than they actually made an agreement with the administration here. But then instead of actually leaving, they decided to basically commandeer a campus building. NPR with the story and with Catherine Marr in charge. I hope this is the truth and not her truth. But anyway, in discussions about ongoing protest encampment on Monday, protesters did not agree to completely deconstruct the camp, while the school did not agree to stop doing business with Israeli companies. Some people left the encampment around 1 a.m. Tuesday, meaning this morning, and moved into Hamilton Hall, an academic building, began moving furniture around, and refused to leave until Columbia agreed to divest from Israel. Protesters also began climbing into open windows at John Jay Hall, a dormitory, according to the university radio station. NYPD said about 2:15 a.m. that it had officers stationed outside the university, but not on school grounds in case the situation escalated. By 8 a.m., not much had changed. Columbia's leadership has set several deadlines. You might call them red lines, Jim, to reach an agreement with demonstrators about the encampment, as the school said it violates school policies and is a threat to campus safety, a disturbance to Jewish students, and students trying to study and sleep. Yet no resolution was made to dismantle the tents. Listen to this weak statement from the Columbia president. Academic leaders and student organizers in these discussions put forward robust and thoughtful offers and worked in good faith to reach common ground. We thank them for all their diligent work, long hours, and careful effort, and wish they had reached a different outcome, unquote. Yeah, the right response is, get out and we're going to start arresting you. But apparently we can't do that. So now we've got basically buildings being taken hostage here.
The message from Columbia University as of this morning: access to campus has been limited to students residing in the residential buildings on campus and employees who provide essential services to campus buildings, labs, and residential student life. And other members of the university committee who can avoid coming to Morningside campus should do so. They've surrendered. They're in retreat. The administration of Columbia no longer runs the Columbia University campus. The protesters do. This is, by the way, I heard someone, so there's an altercation with some of the janitorial staff. Go figure, these, largely minority guys who are making very modest 5-figure sums and in a very expensive city don't have a great tolerance, don't have a lot of patience for these snot-nosed punks paying, $90,000 a year to go to Columbia. I did see something, there was a claim that these guys were taken hostage. I have not seen that confirmed. But let's just say when you're protesting for Hamas, hostage taking doesn't seem out of the question. That kind of just seems, they say, choose your role models carefully. And I think we know who these protesters see as their role models. Look, first of all, president should resign. If everybody in the administration, you should first of all, the board of trustees, where are they?
Right.
They're probably out in Cancun somewhere. They're absolutely AWOL at this moment. But what they should be doing is say to the president, either you get control of the campus or you're out of here. Or we'll find someone who can. Because they're not doing classes. I'm going to continue our theme of political comedy. Office space. What is it you'd say you do here, as the consultants ask of the employees of Initech? Because, why was you're not just there to look pretty in the office there. You're getting paid a pretty penny. Your job is to run the campus and educate students. And right now you can't do it because there's a whole bunch of hooligans here. Oh, by the way, I have heard, not confirmed, but I've heard that the ringleader who they said they kicked off of campus is still there. If you do not enforce a rule, that rule might as well not exist. And so, first of all, look, getting into Columbia was never a real problem for me. Never a real issue I had to contemplate. But if you were a bright kid, why would you want to go to campus? It's anarchy. It's a mess. It's chaos. You can't go to class and study. So, and I'm also kind of left wondering, because there was somebody who ran into trouble. I think it was on one of the other campuses. Might have been down in Florida, where lo and behold, Ben Sass running a tight ship.
Yeah.
State government being run by DeSantis. DeSantis went out and gave the perfect statement on this. Boy, good thing we didn't nominate that guy. He would have been terrible. The president is mumbling, shuffling his feet, absolutely AWOL. Quick to say, anti-Semitic protests are bad, but also anybody who doesn't understand the Palestinians. Yeah, it'd be terrible if we had DeSantis, giving him the business every day. I don't know if anybody in the Ivy League understands how much all the benefits they get from having gone to the Ivy Leagues depends upon the continued good reputation of the Ivy Leagues. And once it starts becoming as a more prestigious version of Trump University, where you pay a ton, but you don't get a lot in return, And the whole thing looks like a giant scam that, they promise you all this great education, but they can't even keep the buildings open. They surrender to they surrender to terrorists the first opportunity. Danegeld University, you could call it. See, the Ivy League people got that because it's a Kipling reference. Anyway, this is where we are, and so it's kind of interesting. The argument of I think is it our occasional guest host X John who said that, or it might have been Stephen Miller, one of those two guys who said wokeism or leftism will take some institution you love, gut it, kill it, gut it, wear it as a skin suit, and walk around as a facsimile of this thing that you once loved but not act and behave. That's what they're doing to the Ivy Leagues right now, because this is not acting like a really high, prestigious institution that prioritizes learning. It is a bunch of terrified administrators hiding behind their desks, hoping that the woke mob won't come after them next. And what is your job? What are you doing here at Columbia University? So
no.
This is absolutely the worst decision since they dismissed Professors Stantz, Venkman, and Spengler back in 1984, doing some remarkable work in the field of parapsychology.
Yes. Big mistake. And political leaders of New York City made some big mistakes in responding to them, too. Do you think part of this is that professors and maybe even some administrators are encouraging these students to be activists, stand up, make a difference, and then once they do it and they become the target, they have no idea what to do about it?
So I'm gonna say something that could end up being really controversial on this podcast. I mean, maybe once when the Afghan government was going to execute that Christian guy, Cam and I went down to when there was this big protest outside. This is back when the allegedly good guys were running the Afghan government. This is I want to say 2005, 2004, something like that. But otherwise, I've never participated in a protest because I'm actually very skeptical that protests do very much. We live in Washington, D.C., you see protests all the time. Ever since probably World Bank in '99 was kind of the kick-started this whole, and you see these people, and it never there's always that one person who had end nuclear weapons outside the White House for 8 straight years or something like that. The U.S. never got rid of nuclear weapons. 99 times out of 100, your protest is not actually going to change the mind of the person inside. There are people who take an inside course and there are people who take an outside course. Standing outside, shouting and chanting very rarely influences the decision. Now, in the case of these administrators on campus, well, they have intimidated them. So maybe the rules have changed. But my sense is a lot of activism is much more about making the activist feel good than actually persuading anybody else. Otherwise, they wouldn't be blocking traffic, getting to the airports. They wouldn't be blocking bridges. They wouldn't be doing any of that kind of stuff. And just secondly, it's ego gratification. It's about feeling connected to this group. It's not, because in the end, I think somebody run the numbers and said that there's a very modest 6-figure fee at Columbia actually had invested in companies that do business in Israel out of a $13.7 billion endowment. By the way, if you're thinking of giving money to Columbia, why? It's like Bill Gates, you're looking a little impoverished these days. Let me throw some more money your way. Oh, BlackRock, you guys are desperate for cash. Let me give you some more.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the World Bank protests of '99 were some of the first really big protests after I moved to Washington. And a wise person who I was talking to on the phone at that time said they don't really care about third world debt relief. There's 2 things happening here. One, they've heard all these gauzy stories of their parents protesting the Vietnam War, so they're trying to latch on to any cause they can. And number 2, left-wing college students who are women care about this issue, and they're probably easier. So,
yes. If you have attractive young women at your protests, you are going to get a lot of guys showing up saying, yeah, I'm down with this cause. And I can't begrudge them that much.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now, as if the last one wasn't crazy enough. But yesterday, Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, was on the Drew Barrymore show. Part of the interview dealt with the fact that if it wasn't exactly yesterday, it's right around this time. That's the 10th anniversary between Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman. And as has been told, after they got married, or maybe even after they just started dating for a while, Emhoff's children started to refer to Kamala, allegedly, as Momala. And so I think that was the premise for this point, where Drew Barrymore, with the most pained look on her face on the couch with Vice President Harris, has a request. Usually Kamala's the one providing the cringe in these situations. This time, it was Drew Barrymore.
I've been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now.
Yeah.
But in our country, we need you to be Momala of the country.
No, we don't. We don't need a mom coming from Washington. That's what actual moms and dads are for. But Jim, I don't want to be too hard on Drew Barrymore. She's had a very traumatic life in a number of different ways. Her childhood was all kinds of messed up. She was an alcoholic at a young age. Good for her for still having a show and finding a way to be successful professionally. But this moment speaks to a larger issue that's been going on for a long time, and it's why the government keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's because people are looking to the government to take care of them rather than do the basic things of securing liberties, securing property rights, and defending the country through the military and so forth. In fact, for those who are big fans of Rush Limbaugh, this was his poster child for this whole thing. Ponytail guy from the 1992 town hall presidential debate. You just mentioned the debate that you showed your kids. Same debate where George Bush Sr. got caught looking at his watch, and that became like a massive scandal for a number of days. But the issue at the time, Carol Roberts was the moderator, and she says, people are very upset with the tone of this campaign. It's so negative. And does anyone in the audience want to speak to that? First of all, never give up the mic to some rando. Always have that planned out. But nonetheless, Ponytail guy stands up and says this.
The focus of my work as a domestic mediator is meeting the needs of the children that I work with by way of their parents and not the wants of their parents. And I ask the three of you, how can we, as symbolically the children of the future president, expect the three of you to meet our needs? The needs in housing and in crime and you name it, as opposed to the wants of your political spin doctors and your political parties.
Look, you can make policies that make life easier for people, less burdensome, but it is not the job of government to treat us like children. And the fact that so many people have gotten into this mindset, Jim, is going to be hard to peel back. It's a big problem.
So for a long time, you could find folks on the right who had that attitude, who were adamant about this. And I think you generally found it on the left. And then around 2015, 2016, Milo Yiannopoulos started calling Trump daddy. And some of us thought, no, this is a very bad idea. You do not, unless your name is Don Jr. or Ivanka or Eric or Tiffany or Barron, you should not be calling Trump daddy. The president is not the national father. We are hiring a temp worker, 4-year contract with an option for another 4. It's like drafting a middle linebacker. This is what we're looking at here. And instead, you run into all kinds of, because here's the thing, parents have, particularly when the kids are young, near absolute authority over their kids. You want to send your kid up to their room, they get sent up to their room. Occasionally, you can appeal to the court of mom if you don't like dad's answer and vice versa. But you don't get to say, let's face it, grandma and grandpa can often come in and louse everything up by spoiling the kids. But in other words, like the metaphor doesn't work. The parallels do not work because everyone involved is supposed to be a responsible adult. This entire system of government only works if people are responsible adults. And I think you look at what we're seeing at Columbia, a lot of people who don't want to be responsible adults. A lot of people who want to be taken care of, a lot of people who want to stay in that extended adolescence of life, deep into life. And so it's just utterly infuriating. I don't think, again, like I'm not going to give a ton of grief to Drew Barrymore because I'm not looking for her to, sophisticated constitutional analysis and all that kind of stuff. It would have been nice if Kamala Harris could say that I understand the sentiment, but I'm no one's mother. By the way, she's a stepmom. And God bless step parents. They're very important. But I do find it kind of interesting you're casting her in the mother role. She actually has children. But just beyond that, no, the vice president is not our mother. The president is not our father. Speaker Johnson is not our uncle. Chuck Schumer is not our annoying cousin. They're not. We'd be kind of funny. You could imagine a funny sketch in which they all got together for Thanksgiving. But in the end, they represent us, and we have the option of replacing them every election day if we want. You don't have the option of replacing your family members, even though you might. I understand that sometimes. Well, your poll. Calvin used to say to his dad, your poll numbers are looking bad, and he never understood why he never got a chance to. Anyway. We had enough bizarre references to comedy throughout the entire podcast, Greg.
No, that's true. First of all, the tried and true, when they try to play the parents against you, first question always in response from me is, have you asked your mom about this? What did she say? There's your answer. Got to present the united front. I thought you were very generous to refer to it as drafting a middle linebacker. I would say they're temps. We're hiring you to do this job. We're going to give you some pretty sensitive information, and then we're going to ask you to leave. That's about it.
I might remember your name. I might not. I'm going to forget it eventually.
Oh, man, this was fun, even though they're heavy topics. Jim, have a great day. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a good Tuesday, and please join us on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.